Hoe kun je het vuur laten branden wanneer je geconfronteerd wordt met trauma en verdriet? Mirella uit Bosnië en Herzegovina vertelt hoe een Bijbels ritueel haar hielp en over haar verlangen om anderen in haar stad te helpen omgaan met hun verdriet.
I was born in Sarajevo, in this city, and a big part of my story is living through the war in the 90s. I was 6 years old and I didn't really understand what was happening. My parents decided to move out of our house, thinking they will come back in a couple of days. And we left all of our things and went to my grandparents' place and didn't return home for the next 4 years. All that we had was gone. My childhood was taken away from me. I grew up overnight and never really had time to process what happened. I became a believer when I was 20 years old, and soon after that, God put this strong desire in my heart to deal with what happened to me. At first, I avoided my pain and refused to face my grief. I was afraid of going to that place and kept running away from it, hoping it would go away by itself. I ignored my emotions for years. I didn't really believe that war actually affected me as much as it did. I tried to control my life as much as possible. And what I really appreciate about God is that through all this time, He was very patient with me, waiting for me to come to that place of openness and readiness to begin the process. And then coronavirus hit the planet and stopped the world and made me stop running as well. I lost all of my distractions that I used to keep my mind away from facing the reality. It was time for me to fall to the ground and die to myself. I have had a desire to become a therapist for years. And I believe this is my unique gift that I can use to serve God here in Bosnia and Herzegovina. But in order to become a therapist, one must go through therapy themselves. And finally, for the first time in my life, I was ready to start that process. My biggest fear in walking into this process was feeling all the pain of my past and not being able to handle it. I thought once I let myself fall apart, no one could pick up the pieces and put me back together. I heard once that a person is ready to change only when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain in order to change. And I knew I could not live my life being overwhelmed by my trauma and about what happened. So I started moving forward. I was always fascinated by how people in the Bible saw rituals. Rituals were a big part of their life and connection to God. I wanted to have a ritual as a part of my life, as a part of my healing process. So I suggested to my therapist if I can take time to lament by sitting in my ashes, and she agreed. And so the next session I came, and she had a ball of ashes that she gave to me, and she said that she is going to stand behind me and that this is my process and I can start whenever I want. And at the beginning, I really didn't know what was happening, but as soon as I put my hands over the ashes, this overwhelming emotion came over me. And I started crying, and I started weeping, and I started mourning over everything that happened to me. I mourned over everything I lost. My childhood, my home, the chance of having a normal life in this country. And I also mourned over the fact that I can never have these things back. It was all ashes, and it cannot be returned. And it was so crucial for me to see this and to experience this. And it was very hard, and it was very painful. Dying wasn't easy for me at all. But like the Bible reminds us, the seed died in order to live to its full potential and to produce many fruits. There is no resurrection without death, and we are reminded of that in this time of the year as well. So I stood up after my process was over. I cleaned up myself and I anointed my head with oil. It was such a powerful moment in my life where I could clearly saw how God used that ritual to heal my heart. I see this process as a gift and grace from God, and I healed in that moment. I am now at the place where I am, thankful for everything that happened to me because it made me who I am. And I no longer want to run away from my pain, but I want to face whatever comes my way. 25 years after the war, and people in Bosnia and Herzegovina are still carrying their wounds of trauma they experienced. It is so easy to see how deeply they are wounded. The aftermath of war is still visible in every corner. I can recognize this in the way how people communicate to each other, how they walk, how they talk, drive, and how they are unaware of their surroundings. I am deeply convicted that part of their healing must be facing the grief that they've experienced, being willing to stop running and stop ignoring themselves, being able to sit in their own ashes as well, to grieve, mourn, and finally to heal. My deep desire is to become a therapist. I want to keep the fire burning by being that person that holds the space for people to do that. I want to serve God in all the gifts He gave me. My hope and prayer is that as we are remembering Christ's sacrifice, these Bible verses from John 12 become reality for all of us. We have a unique opportunity to do this at this time of pandemics, where we are all made to stop and reflect and fall to the ground, die in order to live as a plant that produces many fruits.